Story 1. I work as a lookout at a national forest. Does anyone know what a code black means? Peter, can you even see anything up there? Harry, the oldest, yet least mature forest ranger, said over the two-way. High on my perch in Tower 3, I had a full 360-degree view of unfriended national forest that stretched out to the horizon. This was a dumb joke he liked to ask every time I drew the short straw for this position. Yes, vision is clear. No smoke, no fires, no adverse weather conditions. Cool. Hey, can you see me flipping a double bird, do you? He said this so often that I mouthed the words as he spoke. Harry, like stress or radiation, was fine in small doses. But God help you if you have a weekend shift with the man. That's a negative, I said. How's campsite duty? Slow. There are like 5 campers here and 2 of them are hosts. Phil Fat Jack is back as host of the Western Loop. I can't stand that dude. He's not bad. Little gruff, but once you break through, he's still a little gruff, I said, trying and failing to find something nice to say about Phil Fat Jack. Gruff like those goats from the fairy tale. Weren't they devils or sold to the devil or tricked by a devil? I'm not up to date with my Billy Goat folklore. That's why they put you up in the tower. Meanwhile, the rest of us grounders are thinking of playing poker later. Ground squirrels, or grounders, was the nickname Harry made up for anyone not working in a lookout tower during their shift. It never made sense to me. Squirrels can climb trees, which are nature's towers, but the name stuck. Tower dwellers were named after the sand hill cranes, which inevitably got shortened to Sandies. You all suck at poker, I said. You have to be able to bluff and lie to win. All the people on grounder duty are basically priests. Now I can spin yarns like the best of them. Hey, Nitnuts, why don't you spin me a yarn about how you lost $100 last time we played? Guys, these two-way radios are for emergencies, Gwen said, her voice sounding more exasperated than usual. She was another Sandy setup in Tower 5, about 20 miles northwest of me. She had gifted kid vibes, which made sense, as she had been one, and was easily annoyed with the rest of us, but everyone loved her. Deep down, she loved us too. But like, really deep down. Call John Hammond, we found insects in ancient amber deep. Gwenny, Harry said, dragging out her name. You promised not to play schoolmarm today. Jorge is gone for the week. Let's enjoy a boss-free day. Gwen sighed. 1, I never promised anything. 2, you know I hate Gwenny. And 3, it was a troll in the Three Billy Goats Gruff legend, she said, before adding, oh, and 4, you were the absolute worst poker player in camp, Peter. Boom, Harry said. I couldn't see him doing his bull's horn hand charging at you, but I knew he was doing it. This man was in his 50s. He had kids in college. Everyone knows, bud. Yeah, Gwen is right. These two ways are for official business only. Sandy 3, out. Have fun with Phil Hat Jack, Gwen said. Sandy 5, out. I'll pray no sudden thunderstorms come rolling in, Harry said with a laugh. Grounder 1, over and out, baby. Suck my butt. Again, this man has a mortgage. When I get tower duty, I always bring a book or 2. When you're up in the gentle rocking and quiet of the air, you can get a lot of reading done. I'm currently going through a series of horror movie tie-in novelizations. I just finished Alien and The Fog and was looking forward to The Blob. I wanted to do a run of 40s pulp detective novels next. No, I don't have a girlfriend. Why do you ask? Anyway, after about an hour, my two-way life came to life. Sandy 3, this is Sandy 5. You copy? Gwen was always so formal. Sandy 3 to Sandy 5, I copy. Hey Pete, did you get any emergency calls in the last 10 or so minutes?
Negative, what's up? The cabin's two-way started squawking a bit ago. First, it was just static, but then, well, it kind of sounded musical. Musical? How?
Sounded like a kid's piano playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, I think. It repeated a few times before going silent. Maybe radio signals are bleeding through. I thought that at first too, but haven't heard anything since. Maybe you have a fan out there that really wanted you to hear their rendition of a childhood favorite. If anyone knows I'm up here, I'm already in trouble. No one is scheduled to come out this way today. I wouldn't go speaking that out into the wider world when... I'm not alone. Pearl is here with me. We're attached at the hip, you know? Pearl is what she called her pistol. All of us carried something when we went out into the wild. Out here, though, I understand that it's an important tool in my tool bag. Don't want to be cornered by a wild cat and not have something to scare it away. Pearl is a straight shooter after all.
The best. Let me know if you hear anything, huh? My intuition is pecking at me. Roger. If it comes back, try to record some of it with your phone. Shit, that's a smart idea. Sometimes we non-gifted Sandys stumble into one. I regret telling you that all the flippin' time, Pete. Sandy 5, out. Sandy 3, over and out. I hung up the microphone and walked over to the north-facing window. If the weather is clear, I can sometimes make out Tower 5 from here. It takes a minute to spot, but I always can because, as the old saying goes, there are no straight lines in nature. Well, not technically true. It's mostly true, and a useful guide for spotters. The difference between Mother Nature and her wayward child, mankind. I scanned the horizon for anything out of the ordinary, but everything looked serene. This view never changes, but it also never disappoints. The number of hours I've sat out on the catwalk just staring out at the natural world would astound you. To work as a ranger, you need to have not just a healthy fear and appreciation for the wild, but genuinely love it. Silence. I tried again and again. Nothing. I flipped to a few more frequencies and didn't get a reply. It was like they were ignoring us. I switched back to Gwen and filled her in. She wasn't happy. What the hell? What's going on? What if there's a fire? Is the thing still in the sky? Yup, not moving. Feels like I'm being watched. What's the bearing on your Osborne? The Osborne is a fire detecting tool equipped within every cabin. It's used to determine the location relative to the tower. It swivels 360 degrees and has an accurate topographical map at its center. When you see smoke, you line up the crosshairs and find the degrees along the side. It's accurate enough with one tower, but more so if other towers can center in and cross-reference each other. 329 degrees and 48 minutes, Gwen said. Let me know what you see. I moved the Osborne to the bearing and took a gander through the crosshairs. My eyes are trained to follow along the ridges, so it took a second for me to adjust to the sky. At first, I didn't see anything with my naked eye. Then I noticed the sun glinting off something. Oh, Gwen, I see it. Barely, but there's something there. So, I'm not crazy? Well, that remains to be seen. But with this, you're good. I don't like that I can't get through to fire and rescue. That's never happened before. Try your cell. Maybe you can reach him that way. I tried. No signal. I usually have a few bars out here, but not now. Always when you need it the most, right? No kid. Oh shit. Pete, this thing is dropping. Falling or landing? Both. It's a quick, controlled descent. You see it? I didn't. I'd barely seen it in the air. If it was quickly falling out of the sky, I had no chance of seeing anything. Negative. Shit. It just dipped behind the tree line. I'm filling out a smoke report. I don't know what else to do except follow protocol. Let me try to give them a call on my phone. I had a signal earlier. Hold on. I pulled my phone out, ready to dial, but noticed I didn't have any service. It wasn't even roaming. Just blank, like cell towers had been erased. I tried restarting my phone, but it didn't change anything. I don't have service either, I said into the two-way. Any changes over there?" I heard Gwen hit the button to speak, but she didn't say a word. Instead, I listened to her handheld two-way radio click several times, and sure enough, the beginning of Mary Had a Little Lamb started playing. Finally, she whispered, "Are you hearing this?" "I am." The song suddenly stopped and a calm, almost robotic voice started to speak. Gwen and I stayed quiet as churchgoers as the voice said, 777 Alpha Omega 6. Unknown, unknown, unknown. Repeat, 777 Alpha Omega 6. Unknown, unknown, unknown. The voice stopped and my heart did as well. Seconds later, the tinny version of Mary Had a Little Lamb started playing again. What is that? Who is sending that out? It sounds like a code like from a number station. Number station, as in secret messages to spies number stations? Spies or government officials, maybe. I'm just guessing. It could be someone's idea of a weird prank. Maybe it's the fire and rescue teams just messing with us. I dated a guy in fire and rescue, Gwen said. They don't have an ounce of sense of humor shared among them. I think this is legit, and I think it's bad. Sounds like a warning. And I don't think it's a coincidence it came after this thing showed up and landed. Gwen, we don't know what's going on. I think writing the report is a good idea. Want me to relay a message to the campsites? Get another ranger out there? Maybe you'll get lucky and Harry will get dispatched, I said, trying to lower the tension. Gwen may have sounded calm to the untrained ear, but I knew she was scared, or at the very least, unnerved. I was as well, but didn't want to share that. She laughed, but it sounded like it was Texas two-stepping with crying. Did you know he told me the other day that he thought if given 6 months of training, he could make the Pro Bowler Tour with nothing but alley balls? Maybe we should encourage it and give our ears a break. Actually, he said, I could throw cheese like a pissed-off Wisconsinite, Gwenny, she said, imitating his voice. That man has kids in college, Gwen, I said. That man watched 9/11 as it happened, she said. Oh, that's a good one. Our conversation was cut short when we both heard a low rumble and felt a slow-rolling earthquake shake our towers. I grabbed onto my table as the entire cabin rocked back and forth like a ship hit by a rogue wave. After what felt like 10 hours but was actually just 30 seconds, the shaking stopped. Gwen, you okay? Jesus Christ, I think I heard something in the tower snap. What? I don't know. I was worried this whole thing was going to fall over. Was that an earthquake? Felt like it. When the hell has there ever been an earthquake here? As I made a mental note to look up if this area had ever had a recorded earthquake, I noticed the trees about a mile out violently snap back and forth in a concentric circle, like someone had dropped a pebble in water. The ring of shaking trees quickly spread out, and I felt the concussive wave before I heard it. Again, the tower shuddered from the blast. The northern window shattered and bits of glass came flying inward. I ducked under the desk with the cabin two-way to avoid Swiss cheesing my body. Once the blast passed, I shot up and turned to the southern window. You could physically see the concussive wave working its way through the trees toward the campsites. Gwen, you okay? No response. Gwen, please come back. Over. Nothing. Panic started to set in. If she were near the epicenter of that blast, there was a good chance her tower could have collapsed. She could be hurt or... Well, I didn't want to think that. I tried a third time with no response. My personal two-way squawking. It was Harry calling. He sounded equally nervous and confused. Sandy 3, this is Grounder 1 and... What the f*** was that? I don't know. Are you safe? I think so, but I can't get a hold of Gwen. Oh, shit. Did you see anything? Any smoke? She saw something hovering in the sky that went down near her tower. We tried reaching out to fire and rescue, but they didn't respond. Something was hovering in the sky? Did I hear that right? Affirmative. It went down or landed. We also heard an odd... The cabin's two-way started to chirp. I turned up the speakers and heard clicking and growling. At first, it sounded random, but then I realized multiple things were clicking and growling. It was as if they were communicating with each other. There was a loud, high-pitched electronic squeal that made me slam my hands over my ears. It went on for 10 seconds, and I heard the rest of the glass in the cabin window crack but not fall. When it stopped, I uncovered my ears, but that still didn't chase away the cobwebs. It sounded like my head had been underwater. My ears were swimming. I shook my head and used my thumb to pump at the opening in my ear to help pop them. I heard Harry yelling into my personal two-way. He was jabbering, and I had a hard time making out what he was saying. I took a second, centered myself, and listened. "Jesus, Peter, can you hear me?" "Copy." "Christ on a bike, what took you so long to respond?" "I heard something in the cabin two-way. It sounded like someone clicking, or what I imagine crickets would sound like if they could talk." "Crickets talking? Son, did you hit your head?" The cabin's two-way speaker came back to life. More clicking, but this was deliberate, as if it was signaling to someone. It sounded familiar, and I had no idea how that was even possible. At first, I couldn't make out what it was, but then it dawned on me. It was parroting back, "Mary had a little lamb." "The fuck?" I said, staring at the speaker. I glared at the little box, wishing it could transform into a TV screen and show me what was making that noise. That's when I saw the object rise above the tree line and climb up into the blue sky. It waited for a beat and then zipped towards me.
"Oh, shit," I said, diving under the desk. At speeds I didn't think possible, the craft whooshed over the tower, making it rattle to the foundations. Harry was going nuts over my two-way, rambling about something, but I didn't pay it any attention. Instead, I ran out onto my catwalk to see where this craft had gone to, if that was still even possible. As fast as it was traveling, it might be halfway around the world by now. As soon as I pushed open the door to the catwalk, the air around me felt heavy. It even made my moments slow, like Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. I wondered if hopping would make me move quicker. I glanced up, and everything in my vision was wavy, like when you see gas fumes in the daylight. There was nothing above me that I could see, but I knew it was there. That meant it would have to stop on a dime to be here. Nothing I knew could do that. From inside the cabin, the speaker started bleeding out feedback. At first it was just noise, but it morphed into something I'd been hearing all day. Mary had a little lamb. It made me realize that it was mirroring the message it must have heard at the same time Gwen and I had. In an instant, the song stopped and the air around me returned to normal. Whatever had been lingering around was gone. Harry was calling out from my person two-way. I ran back inside and picked it up. "Peter, do you copy?" "Copy," I said. "Jesus, what's happening out there?" Before I could answer, my eyes flicked towards the north window and I saw a thin ribbon of smoke on the horizon. It looked dangerously close to Gwen's tower. I felt my heart start to race. "Harry, there's smoke near Tower 5. I can't raise Gwen or fire and rescue." "Shit, say no more. I'll grab the UTV and head out. You have a bearing on Osborne for me?" I glanced up to where I'd seen the curl of smoke, but an entire bolt of smoke had replaced the ribbon, or honestly more like a thick pea soup fog that had stretched for about a mile and was still going. No fire spreads that quickly. It reminded me of those snake fireworks that always underwhelmed you as a kid. You light a small black circle, and as it ignites, it expands. At best, it coiled until it became a puff of nothing and blew away in the breeze. At worst, it stopped coiling after about 10 seconds and left a burn mark on your driveway. I had no idea what was going on here.
"Jesus, Harry, I don't know what this is, but I'm not sure it's a fire."
Where is it? Across the horizon, I said, and growing. What? The cabin's two-way light came to life. Through the speaker, we heard a pre-recorded message from the Secretary of Agriculture, the person who oversees all the national forests. In a calm, measured tone, they said, "Rangers, this is a code black warning. Please remain in place and do not interfere with any military officials who may arrive on scene. If there are civilians present, please inform them that they are to remain in place and cannot leave. Anyone found fleeing this location will be considered hostile and subject to severe punishments. Repeat, this is a code black warning. Stay in place and do not interfere with any military officials. Thank you for your cooperation." It came and went like a mid-afternoon storm. I wasn't sure what the smoke or fog was, but I was certain it wasn't just a quickly spreading forest fire. This was something different. Gas attack? Small-scale nuclear device? Dimensional rift? My mind was racing. Harry, what the fuck is a code black? I don't know. Why would they send out the military? Whatever the reason, it ain't good. Kid, I gotta get out to Gwen. If she's at the epicenter of this, who knows if she's still... He didn't finish, but we both knew what he meant. I'd thought nothing but that since she stopped responding. Yeah, go. Be safe, Harry. You know me. Safety is my middle name. Harry Rupert Safety Big Dong Hill, he said, trying to add levity to a tense situation. I gave Harry shit, but that was his true value. He cared about our well-being. I appreciated the attempt, but we were both too scattered to laugh. Grounder 1, out. I walked back out to the catwalk and stared out at the approaching fog. It was so thick that as it slowly advanced, the trees would just disappear from view. I thought about Gwen, and my guts twisted into pretzels. I had been concerned that the tower collapsed earlier, but now that seemed quaint. Was she still alive? Had whatever the code black warning entailed harmed her? The pace at which the fog was approaching was increasing. I'd reluctantly have answers to those questions before too long. I swallowed hard and ran my hands through my sweaty hair. I wanted to do something to help, but I had no idea what I could even do. Would the military arrive soon? Would I be pressed into service? The cabin's two-way started squawking again. Then I heard a familiar voice whisper through the speaker. Sandy 3, this is Sandy 5. You copy? Gwen. I ran back inside and nearly ripped the two-way off the wall by yanking on the microphone. Gwen, are you okay? What's going on? Peter, I can't say much. They may hear me. Who? The creatures in the fog. I fell back down on the ground. I had a hard time breathing. The what? There are dozens of them. They're multiplying. What are they? Shh, don't speak, she whispered. I hear some at the base of the tower. I held my breath, praying she had closed and locked the access to the catwalk. If they went up into the tower, Gwen had nowhere to go. My heart raced and I felt like I might pass out. I drummed on the floor, praying I'd hear Gwen's voice again. They haven't figured out I'm in here yet, she whispered. So far, they've stayed out of the tower. I wanted to respond, but I knew my voice coming out of her speaker would be a beacon that led to her. I stayed quiet. She had kept her finger depressed on the microphone button, and I could hear everything going on in her cabin. I wasn't sure if she had accidentally held it down or if she wanted to leave a record of what happened to her. I heard Gwen's heavy breathing and the occasional rustling of her clothes. I imagined she was tucked under the desk, the long cord trailing from the wall. Sweat beaded my forehead and poured down my face. Seconds later, I heard something that chilled me. It was the clicking and growling noises I had heard earlier. There were dozens of them, different ones in the distance. These things had surrounded the tower. Jesus, I think I hear one on the stairs. Lock the catwalk door, Gwen. Please tell me you locked the catwalk door. I said to myself, as long as she had the microphone in her death grip, none of my messages would reach her. She was smart, and I was hoping she did the smart thing.
Peter, I don't know what's going to happen, but thank you for always being nice to me. Tell Harry the same, dumb jukes and all. But between you and me, The man has personal knowledge of the country's mood during the 2008 housing crisis. Tears formed at the corners of my eyes, but I smiled. Good one, Gwen. I'm not saying this is goodbye. I still have Pearl with me, but in case... Jesus, there are more of them on the stairs now, she said, her voice lowering to the point where it was barely audible. I'm scared, Peter. I don't think these things are from... The radio cut off. No noise, no static, no connection with her two-way. I pressed the button and whispered, Gwen, can you hear me? Silence. The cabin's two-way gear shorted out and died. I ran to my personal two-way, but knew I didn't have the range with it. She was alone, cut off from all humanity. I bolted up and ran to the catwalk. The curtain of fog was inching closer. I thought about Harry, driving like a madman towards it with reckless abandon. He needed to turn back, but there was no way to reach him now. My heart ached. That man had a family. With nothing to do but prepare for the approaching wave, I locked the catwalk and moved the sparse furniture toward the open windows, not to stop them from coming, but to slow them down in the hopes that the military might have a plan. I pulled out my handgun, loaded it, and watched the fog roll toward me. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if any of us will get out of this alive. I don't know if this can even be stopped. I turned to the southern approach, miles from the darkening fog, and admired the landscape. It really is pretty up here. Story 2. My wife is convinced that I've been replaced. Please help me. I don't know what to do. Yes, it probably sounds insane. I should start with the backstory, but God, how hard it is to remember the simple, happy times before everything that happened. I met my wife, Catherine, when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in the small town in Kentucky. You'd have trouble finding it even with a map, and the population was tiny. Everyone knew each other. I'd worked as an electrician all my life, first at a factory, then I started my own small business, repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life had never really worked out until I met her.
I heard electronic squelches behind me and turned to see some of the lights on the cabin's two-way lighting up. I walked back over, picked up the handle, and spoke. Sandy 3, come back? Static broke through the speakers, but that was it. No words, no childhood songs, nothing but grating static. I waited a bit to see if anyone would respond, but after 2 minutes of staring at a speaker, I determined it was nothing. I kicked back in my chair and dove back into my paperback. 2 pages later, Gwen came back. Sandy 3, this is Sandy 5. I groaned as I sat back up and grabbed the microphone. Go for Sandy 3. Peter, do you see something in the sky, north-northwest? Trailing the long, coiled cord behind me, I walked to the window and looked in the direction she told me. I held my hand over my eyes to shield any glare, but still didn't see anything. I pressed the button. Negative. Can't see anything. What is it? I don't know. I was knitting and I heard something whoosh over the tower. Sometimes small planes zip closer than they should, but when I looked out, I didn't see anything. First, then about 10 or so miles out, the sun reflected off something silver in the sky.
She worked as an elementary school teacher, smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. My Catherine was the only ray of light in the darkness around me. I loved her for her simplicity. She could find joy in the most ordinary things: morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we had peace, a home, a dog, and that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be fine. I spent evenings fixing things while she wrote lesson plans or knitted. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, listening to crickets, or stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, thinking about children and what we'd name them. Back then, it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problems began maybe 2 months ago. At first, small things. She started having trouble sleeping. then began looking at me strangely, as if something in my face disturbed her. I asked if everything was okay, and she laughed. "Sorry, just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy." Gradually, though I can't even say exactly when, it got worse. She slept less, not because she had insomnia, but because she was afraid to fall asleep. I asked her what was wrong, but she said she was fine. Still, when we lay together, she'd suddenly get up and go into another room, returning only at dawn. She started having nightmares but never told me what they were. One day, I lost my temper. You have to understand, I was just worried about my wife. From the lack of sleep, she started to look worse. Dark circles under her eyes, red eyes, pale skin. She lost weight, and every time I tried to help her, she pushed me away. So I sat her down across from me and directly asked what she was dreaming about. She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively, as if she was afraid. And then, when tears began to roll down her cheeks, she whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. Cut, I'm scared, Tom." I went to hug her, and when I reached for her, she flinched, as if I'd frightened her. After that, things seemed to get better, or so I thought. How wrong I was. She used to ask how my day went, but now she just stared out the window. With each passing day, she spoke to me less and less, her words short and dry, and then she'd go to the bathroom or kitchen for some errands, closing the door behind her. And it wasn't just the silence, her eyes had changed. If before they were green, emerald-like, full of life and love, now her gaze made my spine go cold.
There wasn't anger or hatred there. No, it was something closer to mistrust, wariness, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Over the next week, I began to feel anxious, a strange burning under my skin, as if something was wrong, but I couldn't tell where the crack was, until I realized she was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her eyes on me. I'd look up and she'd immediately turn away, pretending to slice fruit, but her fingers trembled and the knife froze halfway to the board. I'd step outside for a smoke, and when I turned around, I'd see her peeking through the curtain, then she'd instantly close it. When I showered, I'd catch her watching me, studying my body, then she'd run away. She started doing it even while I slept. She almost stopped talking to me, instead writing something in a notebook and hiding it as soon as I entered the room. Photos began to disappear from their frames. She'd talk on the phone with someone, but hang up the moment I came in. I made an appointment with a psychologist for us, but she refused and said she was afraid to be near me. It all happened so suddenly. It seemed just yesterday we were stargazing in each other's arms, and now this. The strangeness grew every day. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would calm her, but it was useless. Her paranoia only worsened. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed, "Don't come near me!" and flinched as if I'd hit her. After one of those nights, I decided I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant taking her to a doctor afterward. I pretended to be asleep when she stood in the hallway, then she slowly approached, soft, careful steps. She stopped at the foot of the bed, and for several seconds there was a dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I could feel her watching, not just watching, comparing. That's when I became truly terrified, a cold dread twisting inside me as my wife became something I couldn't recognize. Then the bed shifted slightly, and she sat down on the edge. The air grew heavy. I could feel her stare physically, like pressure on my skin. Then her cold fingers gently touched my wrist, held it for a few seconds, then quickly let go as if burned, and whispered, "Pulse faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly twitched. She leaned closer. I could hear her breathing against my face, short, shaky. She smelled of lavender and something sour that made goosebumps crawl down my back. Her lips barely moved. I remember clearly, Tom had a small scar right here. She touched my cheek, but you don't. I clenched my teeth to keep from gasping. Those few seconds of silence lasted an eternity. What scar? I never had a scar on my cheek. I'd know if I did. I wanted to sink into the ground and scream all at once, but I kept lying still until I heard a choked sob and her fading footsteps. The door slammed. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding furiously. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, too afraid to close my eyes. In the morning, I went to work early, dreading the hours until my shift ended. That evening, over dinner, I said, "Kate, we need to talk. What's going on?" She gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white, then looked me dead in the eye. "Tom, you've been acting strange." "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice sounds wrong. You even smell different." I didn't know what to say. My head was in chaos, and somehow I just laughed. "Kate, maybe you're just imagining things." "I don't know, Tom." My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the largest kitchen knife should have been, the one we used for everything. Bread, meat, anything. I distinctly remembered it being there before that night. My heart slammed into my throat with a primal panic. I looked at Kate, and she was staring right at me. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. It hit me then. My wife might be planning to kill me. The next morning, she left for work, and I, like a caged animal, started searching the house. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I know I should have just left or taken her to a hospital, but she's my wife. I love her. She has to see that I am me. I tore through the apartment, frantic, desperate to find something that would help me understand what was happening to her. And I did. After about an hour, in the back of the closet behind a pile of sweaters, I found her wooden box. Old, slightly cracked. The lid was ajar, and when I opened it, a thick notebook fell into my hands. It smelled of coffee and sweat. Her initials on the cover, written in her neat cursive. My heart froze as I realized it was the diary she'd been hiding from me. The paper bent under my fingers. Her handwriting was familiar, but this time jagged, shaky, the page stained with what looked like tears.
He's sleeping. I stand by the bed and watch. He looks like Tom, but he's not. Tom had a scar on his left hand from that accident by the river. This one's skin is smooth. He smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something replaced him. I keep counting days, marking steps. If the real Tom, my husband, is alive, where is he? A wave of nausea rose in my throat. With each page, her handwriting grew more erratic. I tested his speech. He says, "I love you," in the same tone, but without warmth, not like before. Tom smelled of vanilla, but this one smells of dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air around me tightened like a noose. I flipped to the last page. I can't let this thing stay in our house. It wears his smile, his name. I tried talking to it, begging, but it just smiled and said all the right words. It didn't defend itself, maybe because it isn't afraid. Its right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today, but for some reason I couldn't. I know I have to. For Tom, I won't let some monster wear his skin. My hands were slick with sweat. My whole body was sweating even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down, trying to process everything I'd just read. An accident. God, she was exaggerating. All that came out of it was a concussion and some bruised ribs. I stayed in the hospital for about a week. Yeah, 7 days. Then my phone rang, making me jump. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. "Tom, is everything all right over there? Catherine called, said someone's living in your house pretending to be your husband." I froze. "What did you say?" "Says you're not you. I've known her for years and always seemed stable. Domestic quarrel, huh?" "No, just stress. She's tired." Evening came slowly. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, looking at an old photograph, the one that used to sit on our mantel before all this. Catherine and I by the lake, smiling, her arms around me, the sun so bright that day, we had to squint. I stared at us, at the little details, her blonde hair catching the light, her hand around mine, the green shimmer in our eyes. It felt like a lifetime ago. When the door creaked open, I nearly jumped. My wife's, if I can still call her that, steps were slow and tired, her bag thudding softly to the floor. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her hair a mess. I stood, holding the diary. "Kate, we need to talk." She looked at me warily, like a trapped animal sensing a snare. "What's that in your hand?" Her voice was even, but something trembled in it. I found this. I need to understand what's happening," I said, showing her the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment I thought she'd break down crying, but instead she slowly stepped closer, looking straight into my face, her cold breath brushing against my skin. "So what did you figure out, Tom? That I'm crazy? You think I've lost my mind, don't you?" "No, you wrote that I've been replaced, that I don't have a scar." She turned away, her lips pressed tight. "Tom had one. We even joked it made him look tougher." "Listen, sweetheart." I took a step closer, a strange knot tightening in my gut. "I'm the same man. I remember everything. How we met, the candles at our wedding, how you laugh when we watch comedies, what you said about that stupid show when we finished it. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me." She stared at me, unblinking, her shoulders trembling as if she were freezing. I looked into her eyes, and there was something there. Pain and horror mixed together, as if I stood before her as someone both familiar and wrong. "You say it like you've rehearsed it." "Because it's true." I stepped closer, my voice cracking into a shout. "What do I have to do for you to believe me? What?" Catherine said nothing, just breathed heavily like she was fighting herself, staring into my eyes. Then she suddenly backed away, step by step toward her bag. I didn't realize what was happening at first. She bent down as if for a handkerchief, and in the next moment I saw the glint of metal, a knife, the missing one. "Kate," I breathed, disbelieving. "Catherine, put it down." "Stop! Stop pretending, you monster!" I managed to half-step toward her. She raised her hand. At first I thought she was only threatening me. Panic tightened my fists. I wanted to yell, to grab her shoulders, to make her listen. But then, a strike. Burning pain slashed through my chest. Everything went white. The last thing I saw was her face, so familiar, twisted by terror and despair at once. She stood over me, her hand trembling, her lips whispering something like, "Tom, where are you, my love?" And then, everything went dark. I woke up in the hospital. At first, nothing but fog. Then the smell of antiseptic, the faint beep of a monitor, unfamiliar voices. I tried to move my head. Pain shot through my body. The doctor explained I'd lost a lot of blood but somehow survived. The knife missed my heart by an inch. Catherine had run away. I listened, not believing any of it was real. A couple of days later, Martin came by. I told him everything about the knife, the diary, and her thinking I wasn't me. He listened, frowning, taking notes. When he finished and was about to leave, he turned back. "Didn't expect this from Catherine. Don't worry, we'll find her. When you're discharged, come by my place. I got some Cuban cigars from a friend. We'll relax a bit." Without thinking, I said, "I don't smoke." He frowned, about to say something, but then just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For several minutes I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. Then I noticed a small mirror in the corner of the room. I looked at my reflection and froze. My face was pale, my lips dry, but that wasn't what caught my attention. Interesting. Can eyes change color from green to blue? Story 3. Little Monsters. I've always been a big fan of Halloween. When I was a kid, that was of course because of the candy and the chocolate bars. As I got older and entered my teenage years, that changed. My love for the holiday remained, but that was because of the costumes and decorations. I have this one neighbor, you know the type, the one that goes all out on either Christmas or Halloween. Luckily for me, it was the latter. She'd put up statues of plague doctors, clowns, and whatever else she could get. It was awesome, and I couldn't wait until I was an adult so I could decorate my front yard with skulls and jack-o'-lanterns. I'd probably disappoint teenage me, but money doesn't grow on trees.
Still, even as I settled into adulthood, Halloween remained dear to me. Though admittedly, that's because I met my fiancée, Mary, on October 31st of our last year in high school. Before you ask, yes, we were wearing costumes. She wore a prom dress covered in blood, and I was dressed as the axe-wielding Jack Torrance. We soon bonded over our shared love of Stephen King, and that night, a relationship started that would last for 7 years, 5 of which were dominated by our little labradoodle, Shalon. They were the best years of my life. This Halloween was different. It started out normal, us cuddling up on the couch and watching kids in costumes start trick-or-treating a little early. Such is the nature of kids, as we all know. Halloween being on a Saturday gave them the excuse. Mary and I laughed when a group of superheroes, the Avengers I think, showed up before the sun had even gone down. We answered the door a few times, smiling, handing out candy, the usual. But there was one group that stuck out towards the end. 3 kids, or, well, teenagers really. Their costumes weren't costumes at all. One wore a plain hoodie with the hood pulled low and a bandana covering everything below his dark eyes. The teen in the middle wore a stiff potato sack draped over his face with the eye holes cut too big. The last and smallest of the group, a girl by the looks of it, had her face painted in a style reminiscent of a hard rock band like Kiss. "Trick or treat," the girl giggled, holding out a pillowcase full of sweets. They all looked at me the way a toddler looks at a monkey at the zoo. Something about them felt off, and I wanted nothing more in that moment than to slam the door shut and forget all about the holiday. Instead, like the moron I am, I grabbed a few Milky Way chocolate bars from the bucket next to the door and dropped them into the pillowcase. The girl's eyes lingered on my engagement ring, which usually made me happy. I talked people's ears off about the way I proposed to my fiancé, the way we met, and just how idyllic our life was. This girl didn't look at it with curiosity, however. Her eyes gleamed like those of a predator who'd just seen its dinner and found it to be delectable. "You married, mister?" she asked with a wry smirk on her face. After a brief and awkward pause, I replied, "Yeah, you kids have fun now." I closed the door, but not before catching the kid with the bandana tilting his head to look inside of my home. Shalon was at my side before long, wagging her tail and drooling all over my new and unfortunately expensive shoes. I cleaned them, though not before a tease from Mary. They weren't exactly shiny, but they would do for our date. Later, when it was time for our dinner reservation, we left the usual bowl outside. Take one, be honest, all that. We knew it would probably all go into a single person's bowl, but it was better than nothing. We were excited, dressed up a little nicer than usual, and headed to the restaurant. For a while, I forgot about those kids. But when we came back, the street was quiet. Most of the houses had gone dark, and our bowl was gone. Not just the candy inside, someone had actually taken the shitty $2 plastic bowl with them. "Shit, at least they left a note," Mary chuckled. I was less humored by the abduction of my favorite shitty bowl. I grabbed the piece of paper and we went inside, where Shalon barked up a storm at the sound of Mary's keys jingling in the lock. As soon as we entered, we gave her the pets and belly rubs she deserved, as well as the leftovers of our meal. I laid the note on the table, only now noticing what was written in messy, bold letters, like a kid would scrawl their first words with a crayon. "Thank you." That was all it said. Under it was a symbol, one I can only describe as an empty hourglass inside of a circle. "See? Polite little monsters," Mary teased, crumpling it and tossing it into the trash. I forced a laugh, but the image stuck with me. I tried to push it out of my head as we kicked off our shoes and gave Shalon her leftover steak. She wagged like she had won the lottery, scarfing it down before immediately begging for more. Dogs in a nutshell. By the time we cleaned up and changed into something comfortable, we were as exhausted as Shalon after a long walk. I glanced out the window one last time, and nothing but the dark and empty street looked back. "Come on," Mary yawned, already halfway up the stairs. "Bedtime. Shalon's already claimed her spot." Sure enough, our dog was curled up at the top step, tail thumping lazily against the carpet. I gave the front door one last look. Locked, bolted. I followed them upstairs. As Shalon made her way to our bedroom, she stopped dead in her tracks, then arched her back and growled at the door to our bathroom. Mary and I shared a look, and I could smell the fear in her breath mingling with mine. She backed up, nearly bumping into the hallway closet as I put my index finger to my lips in the universal gesture for quiet. I creeped towards the door. Mary stood shivering behind me, fear in her eyes. I knew how she felt, the hope of being wrong and the fear of being right. My hand rested on the doorknob. But when I swung it open, there was nothing. Suddenly, Shalon spun around and barked at Mary. Wondering what the fuck was going on, I turned to Shalon and bent over to pick her up and calm her down. "Felix!" my fiancé screamed. Just as I looked up to see why she yelled my name, something crashed down hard against the back of my head, and I fell, sprawled out on the floor. I tasted copper, along with a very distinct feeling of my own molar piercing my cheek. Mary continued to scream, and I could only watch as the closet behind her opened. Two gloved hands shot out from the darkness, rag in hand. The rag, held like a garrote wire, was forced into her mouth, and she was pulled towards the closet. It was then that I saw the familiar white and black face paint of her assailant. Contrary to before, she wasn't smirking, but smiling gleefully from ear to ear. As Mary tried to fight back, someone else stepped over me. Shalon, oh sweet puppy that she was, leapt towards the teen who had bashed me on the head. Her teeth caught his heel, and he yelped like a child.
"Fucking piece of shit," he yelled, though it was muffled by the bandana he wore. Shalon did not relent. She tore and bit at his heel like it was a tasty bone. I heard heavy footfalls behind me. Before I even registered them, a heavy-duty work boot crashed into Shalon and she let go, startled. I could see blood and some flesh in the fur around her mouth. "Ugh, what the fuck are you doing, dipshit? Kill it!" the injured kid yelled, clutching his bleeding heel. The potato sack kid kicked Shalon again, who retreated behind the corner. He followed. Shalon yelped, a few thumps followed, and the kid emerged from the corner with a kitchen knife drenched in blood. Mary screamed, defeated, yammering, "No!" I stood, dazed, and saw Mary kicking a potato sack kid. Her arms were bound behind her at the wrists and she was gagged. I don't think any man or woman truly knows their own strength until they see what they love most being ripped away from them. That is when you see the true endurance of the human spirit. It was my body that helped me here, however, as I screamed and ran at the kid with that stupid fucking sack over his face. My shoulder connected with his back and I sent him tumbling into the wall with a muffled cry. My fist connected with the back of his head next, then I turned around to face the girl struggling with my fiancé. She was not who I found. The hooded kid stood before me, weight resting on his good leg. More importantly, he had a baseball bat which was on a trajectory with my side. The blow landed with a thwack and I fell down again. My consciousness waned, my vision dark at the edges. Mary's struggles died as her feet were bound at the ankles. "Get the fuck up, you pussy," Bandana Boy said between groans of pain. "Pussy? Least I didn't scream like a little bitch," Potato Sack replied, hand pressed against the spot where I'd punched him. They continued bickering, but I couldn't make out the words anymore. The darkness of unconsciousness embraced me with its cold arms. Mary whimpered. A distant jolt of pain erupted from somewhere in my gut. I tasted copper, thick as syrup, and it coated my mouth. Some fabric, a rag perhaps, had been shoved into my mouth and bound behind my head. There was a droning noise coming from my right. Voices, laughter. It was the television. But how? We never forgot to turn it off, not even when our eyelids drooped and our limbs felt as heavy as lead. The teens, I remembered. They must have turned it on. But why? I raised my head and opened my puffy eyes. The back of my head and my side throbbed in unison, like a slow, calm heartbeat. Run! I had to run. Yes, I'd dash through the house and across the street. I'd scream for help, knock on every neighbor's door, wake every damn dog in the neighborhood until their barking and whining chorus woke their owners. I raised my right arm. It stayed in place, something rough and tight restraining it at the wrist and elbow. I tried with my left arm, but it too was restrained. So were my legs. The old wooden armrests groaned whenever I tried to move, and the sound intensified the aching in my head. "Morning, sleepyhead," a giddy girl's voice spoke in my direction. I opened my eyes. Mary was opposite me, tied to a chair the same way I was. Her mascara streaked down her face in black rivers, her mouth gagged with the same rag as before. She looked at me with wide, fearful eyes. Her whole body shook as she sobbed against the fabric. And then I heard it. Laughter. Not nervous laughter, not even cruel chuckling like you'd hear in a cartoon. It was giddy, bubbling, and it came in bursts from the girl with the painted face. Slowly she crept up to my fiancé until she stood right in front of her. She clapped her hands together. "Boo!" Mary jolted, screaming behind the cloth. This caused the girl to giggle some more, skipping around our living room like a happy child on Christmas. "This is great," the girl beamed as she spun to the others. The boy in the bandana was sitting cross-legged on the floor, pouting. "Make it quick. Still gotta clean the fucking blood upstairs." "Hey, I'm savoring this. Not my fault you let yourself get bit." She turned her attention to something behind me. "Ah, there you are. And is that a gift for me? You shouldn't have." She hugged him, then skipped over to Mary. Potato Sack followed her wordlessly, humming something that sounded like a lullaby. Bandana Boy still sat in the corner, though he'd now taken out a Milky Way bar and was eating it under the cloth wrapped around his face. He glared at the girl with spiteful eyes, as if he was trying to make her head explode through sheer force of will. Her head remained steadfast on her body, though, and she now stood behind Mary. Throughout this whole ordeal, she and I had been exchanging nervous glances. I hated to see her like that, and I tried constantly to wring out of my restraints. They were, however, far too tight, and my hope quickly plummeted. Hysterical mumbles came from both Mary and I as the girl violently wrapped something around Mary's neck. "Oh, quit crying! Will you shut him up?" She looked up at Potato Sack as she tightened the thing around Mary's throat, drowning her cries. A blinding blash of pain shot through my cheek as Potato Sack punched me with tremendous force. The gaping pit of where my molar used to be cried in sharp, but yet also dull pain. He grabbed my chin with a gloved hand, blood running from my mouth onto the black leather. Forcing me to look at him, he put his index finger to where his lips would be under the sack in the universal gesture for quiet, then threw my head back and released me. Mary sobbed, and something jingled. It was then that I realized what the girl had done. "Looks good on you," she laughed. "Bit tight, though. Can you breathe?" Mary cried a muffled word that sounded like, "No!" Shalon's bloody collar dug into her skin, making it more than a bit difficult to breathe.
"What was that?" "Yes, you can," the girl asked, leaning in closer. Mary thrashed around, the collar jingling with every movement. I tried to sprint at the girl with the face paint, but as soon as I moved, Potato Sack smacked me on the back of the head. It felt like my brain was a tennis ball being hit across the court, back and forth. Mary's chair tipped as she writhed, the back legs scraping the hardwood. She thrashed her body around like a rag doll, as if she was trying to tear herself free through sheer desperation, ropes biting into her skin until blood seeped through the burn marks on her elbows. The girl squealed with delight and clapped again. "Look at her go! Oh my God, she's like one of those inflatable waving noodle guys at a car wash. You're so funny, Mary." Mary half sobbed, half screamed into the gag, muffled, high-pitched, thrashing so hard I could hear the old wood creak beneath her. I, too, pulled with everything in me, jerking at my own restraints until the chair groaned and my wrists grew raw. Nothing gave, not even a splinter. The girl crouched, bringing her face inches from Mary's, head cocked like she was studying an animal at the zoo. "Aw, you're crying. I wish I could help you, but I can't. They," she nodded towards the other two teens, "wouldn't let me. And I don't honestly think I'd want to. This is so much fun." She tapped Mary's nose and stood, spinning away on her heels, humming along to the opening of Friends, playing from the television. Bandana Boy finally stopped his hateful glaring, crumpling the candy wrapper in his fist. "Fuck, you're making this take for fucking ever. Just slit her goddamn throat and be done. My fucking leg still hurts and we don't have all night." She gasped dramatically, whirling on him. "Excuse me," she said with an offended tone. "Do you ever have fun with anything? This isn't like shoving Taco Bell down your throat before Mom gets home. This is art." "Art my ass," Bandana Boy grumbled. "You're stalling, always stalling. And I'm not cleaning her off if she pisses herself when you pull your ha-ha-boo shit." "Language, sweetie," the girl said sweetly, wagging her finger. "We have guests." She gestured at us. Then she twirled and faced me, her painted face glistening under the TV's bright light. "You look like you want to say something. You want to say something, Mr. Sleepyhead?" I screamed 1,000 inaudible vulgarities into the gag. Twisting with such force, my chair rattled against the floorboards. Veins bulged in my neck and forehead. My arms screamed fire, but the ropes only dug deeper. I felt my skin twist and tear under the strain, warm blood sliding down my arm and onto the armrest. Potato Sack stepped closer. His massive shadow rolled over me like a storm cloud. He didn't move quickly, didn't threaten. He didn't need to. "Aw, don't be mean to him," the girl said, smacking Potato Sack lightly on the chest, as though he were her big brother and they were role-playing on the playground. "He's cute when he's angry. Look at those eyes. They're like—" She leaned toward me, peering close, like a deer right before it goes thump, thump, thump on the hood. She mimed the action, placing her hands on an imaginary steering wheel and going up and down with the aforementioned thumps. Mary writhed harder at those words, her eyes caught between desperation and fury. Her screams were raw, shredded, but they were turned to pitiful wet sobs, as if pushed through a meat grinder. Bandana Boy cackled. "Yeah, and you're the fucking Subaru!" "Language," she snapped again, but then suddenly, like flicking the lights on, she burst into giggles. "Oh my God, you're funny when you're mean!" The girl whipped back around, crouching low to Mary's trembling form. "But you," she whispered, her voice sing-song now, "you're the main event." She plucked the dangling tag of the collar, letting it tinkle like a bell. With her other hand, she gently reached up and slowly took the gag out of Mary's mouth. I watched, breath caught dead in my throat. "Why?" Mary sobbed, eyes downturned. The girl made a tis-tis-tis sound and lifted Mary's chin. "It's because it's fun," she said, looking Mary dead in the eyes. Her grin grew to a manic smirk. "Please don't kill us!" Mary cried. The girl's smile stayed perfectly in place. "Sorry, no can do. This is all going to be over soon. The sun, the dark one, wills it so. You're lucky, you know. You won't live to see the rest. They're much worse than us, but you gotta start somewhere, right?" As she saw the look of confusion on my fiancé's face, she decided that it'd been enough. She reached back up to put the rag back into place, and as her fingers came closer, Mary lunged forward and bit down hard. With a pained yelp, the girl yanked the collar so hard the chair toppled, Mary crashing sideways with a hollow bang against the floor. A spray of blood shot through the air, covering Mary's face. 3 fingers rolled across the floor, blood streaming between the floorboards like tiny crimson rivers. The girl howled a cry of pain, which was quickly replaced by an animalistic growl. She clutched the ruined, uneven stumps of her fingers, blood streaming down her arm as if from a spring. "You bit me!" she screeched. The smirk she once wore now replaced with a furious snarl. "You stupid little whore!" She kicked Mary's chair, only managing to hurt her own foot. Mary coughed, spitting out blood that wasn't her own, her body convulsing as she tried to free herself again. The girl loomed, clenched teeth bared. "No more games. I'm gonna fucking kill you."
Bandana Boy's eyes lit up like it was Christmas. Finally! He rose, looked at the blood spurting from the girl's fingers as if noticing it for the first time, then clenched his eyes shut in frustration. More blood to clean up. Potato Sack just stared down, letting the girl do as she wanted, but ready to jump in and end it quickly should things go south. The time bomb in my chest that was panic finally detonated, sending its shockwaves coursing through my veins. I knew what was coming. They weren't bluffing anymore. They were going to kill my Mary. "Hey!" I roared into the gag, thrashing, rattling the chair so hard it screeched across the floor. "Hey!" I slammed the legs down over and over, splintering them on the hardwood floor. The girl snapped her head toward me, eyes wide and furious. Something hid behind those eyes, swishing and curling like mist behind her pupils. "Shut him up," she hissed, then added, "Make him hurt like she hurt me." Potato Sack's hand clamped around my arm, squeezing until I thought the bone would snap and puncture my flesh. With his other arm, he gestured for Bandana Boy to bring him something. He dashed away, then emerged with a hammer. Mary screamed as she saw it, but the girl was upon her a moment later. Bandana Boy held me after handing Potato Sack the hammer, restraining me even further, though I think it was just so he could get a better look at what was about to happen. Pain. This moment was when I truly understood that word. Being so helpless not only to help your own suffering, but also that of the person you love most. The first blow came down and sent molten lightning up my arm, a wet crack tearing from my hand. I screamed into the gag, the sound muffled, ragged. He hit me again, each hit landing with blinding hot white light. I tasted bile. The jingling of Shalon's collar brought my senses back. The smell of my own blood hit my nostrils before I could even see my bloodied hand. That was unimportant. On the floor, Mary wheezed, coughing, her eyes full of fright and panic. The girl's bloodied hands were wrapped tightly around her neck. Mary's eyes, her beautiful blue eyes, were bloodshot and full of tears. The girl leaned closer. Her mouth opened, but before she could speak, Mary jerked free of her slick, bloody hands and whipped her head around. A disgusting thudding sound echoed from them as Mary's headbutt landed. The girl screamed, stumbling back. Bandana Boy groaned. "That's why you just fucking kill them, you dumb piece of shit." As the girl and Bandana Boy glared at each other, Mary writhed again. She strained every muscle in her body, and finally her chair collapsed under her. Wood splintered, and like a phoenix, she was born anew. She lurched upward with one jagged shard of wood clenched in her still-bound hands.
I lurched to help her, but the rope still bit into my skin. I writhed and pulled back. My mangled and broken hand, slick with oozing blood, moved ever so slightly further than my other hand. This was it. This was hope. Writhing, fighting, and twisting, I worked the hand out of the ever slicker rope. It hurt. It fucking hurt like nothing else, but I had to, for her. I tugged my hand back with such force I thought it might sever at the wrist. My hand shot out of its bounds, through both ropes. Quickly, I tried to loosen the ropes on my other hand, but it proved futile. Seeing no other way, I slicked my wrist with the blood still gushing from my battered hand and started the process over. I was faintly aware of Mary fighting the two remaining teens, but I needed to get out of that goddamn chair if I was going to have a chance at helping her. When my arm came free, I made quick work of the ropes binding my legs. The ropes fell away from my legs as I ripped my gag off, the chair tumbling sideways as I kicked free. I scrambled, blood pooling on the hardwood, the hammer still lying in a smear of crimson at Potato Sack's feet. Then I looked up. Mary stood, her shard of splintered wood in hand, its tip dripping blood. Potato Sack lay sprawled on the ground, clutching his side. The girl and Bandana Boy were circling her like vultures, the girl cradling her ruined fingers against her chest. "You think you're clever, bitch," she spat, her voice a shrill mix of fury and delight. "Think you can just fuck with my art and get away with it?" Mary staggered backward, bound wrists still clutching the bloody shard. Her chest rose and fell so quickly it looked like her heart might explode. "Stay the fuck away from me," she croaked, her eyes blazing. You know that hysterical look a cornered animal gets right before it leaps for its attacker's throat? Mary had that exact look in her eyes. She wasn't thinking, and soon enough Bandana Boy had snuck up behind her. He took a large knife from between his waistband and readied it. I didn't shout. I gave no warning before I barreled at him in a full sprint. With no regard for my own life, I leapt towards Bandana Boy and caught him midair, both of us tumbling to the ground. I caught both Mary and the girl looking at us in surprise. Then I focused on the knife. It had landed 3 feet away from the boy and I. I lay on top of him. His bandana had come off, and I saw a boy. He didn't look scary or even out of the ordinary. Shaggy blonde hair, thin lips, and unremarkable brown eyes. I had no clue who he was. He seized my moment of confusion and kicked me in the groin, then spit in my face. I fell down behind him. He crawled towards the knife, but I was faster. As his fingers curled around the hilt of the blade, I was atop him once more. I grabbed his head with both hands and raised it, then brought it down hard on the floor. The dull thwack that followed still haunts me at night, but all events of this night do, if I'm honest. His grip tightened, so I brought his bloodied head up again, then smashed it into the ground with all the force I could muster. His fingers went limp. The scent of his piss-soaked pants assaulted my nostrils. Behind me, a fit of laughter erupted. I spun my head to see Mary had stabbed her piece of wood through the girl's already mangled hand. They were both laughing. Then the girl, with a face that now had 3 shades instead of 2, reached behind her and unsheathed a kitchen knife from her waistband and drove it into Mary's stomach. Mary's legs went limp. She groaned softly, then dropped to the floor. The white, black, and now red-faced devil whipped her head back in pure ecstasy as she laughed. She had cut and severed our future, perhaps not as cleanly as she'd have liked, but when you butcher a carcass, you don't need a surgeon's precision when a butcher's bluntness will do the job just as well.
I ran at her, screaming. She tried to swing the knife into my side, but either because of her blood loss or because she was still bathing in ecstasy, she'd grown sloppy. I flicked her hand away, and the knife flew from her grip. My mangled fist met her jaw, and I felt it pop and dislocate. Her laughter did not let up, not after the first punch, and not after the second or the third. It turned from a maniacal laugh into a sputtering gurgle, but it stayed long after I'd stopped counting the punches I threw. I didn't stop until my knuckles were covered in blood and face paint, and her face was little more than a pulp of flesh, bone, and gushing blood. Mary was still breathing when I ran to her, though softly. She lay on her back, blood pooling beneath her, hands pressed weakly against the wound. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of me collapsing beside her. I sat on my knees and held her in my arms. My broken hand hovered uselessly before finding hers, slick and trembling. "It's okay now, honey. I've got you." She shook her head, a distant smile on her lips. "Felix," she whispered, looking at my hand. In her final moments, she was more worried about my shattered hand than her own impending death. No, stay with me. You're gonna stay with me, okay?" I pressed my hand against her wound, uselessly, desperately. My tears fell into her blood. "Mary, please." Her hand twitched against mine, then slid limply away. Her chest shuddered once, and then stilled. I held her, rocking her back and forth like you'd rock a child to sleep. My tears fell on her cheeks. The room was quiet, too quiet. Behind me, Potato Sack groaned. He wasn't dead. Life is, well, life. It can be so unfair. I lost my wife, and yes, I call her my wife even if we never officially married. I lost my dog, and my hand. But that fucking murderous piece of shit lives. They tried to get a motive, or, well, anything out of him. He didn't talk. From what I hear, he's catatonic, like a plant. I honestly have no idea how or why that is, but what that girl said to Mary keeps ringing in my ears. "This is all going to be over soon. The sun, the dark one, wills it so. You're lucky, you know. You won't live to see the rest. They're much worse than us." The symbol they drew on the paper, the circle with an empty hourglass inside. I've read of other incidents where it was found in the years since Mary's death. Some cult footage, a creature called a fern. It's even been linked to an AI. I don't know if I believe any of this, but like I said, that girl said some cryptic stuff, and I don't know what to make of it. This is simply my account of what happened on Halloween in 2019. Make of it what you will. I won't be reading your comments. It hurts too much. Whenever I close my eyes, I'm back on that floor, holding Mary, begging her to stay. I think often in those moments that I should have died there too. Maybe I did. Maybe my time will come when the dark sun rises and carries death upon the wind.
Story 4. I got my daughter a new toy called Feed Me Phoebe. Single mother here with a daughter that just turned 4 last week. During mornings, she likes to watch TV before I leave work and the babysitter comes over. She sits there gobbling down cereal and occasionally babbling nonsense. It's adorable, really. To say we're tight on money right now is an understatement. I can barely afford to keep the lights on. But every time I grimaced at a new bill in the mail, there she is to pull me out of my storm, smiling, laughing, my little ball of sunshine. She doesn't have many toys, not new ones at least. I typically end up buying her used toys from a messy aisle at Goodwill. But a couple days ago, a commercial popped up on TV. I was in the kitchen cooking breakfast when I heard her yelling for me to come to the living room. I ran out, initially thinking something was wrong, before I saw her pointing at the TV excitedly, spoon forgotten on the floor. "Mommy, look!" The commercial showed several children talking to a doll, feeding it fake food, dressing it up. I watched for about 20 seconds before it ended, and a choir of children sang, "We love Feed Me, Phoebe!" "I want that toy! I want that toy! Mommy, please!" she begged, standing up and practically bouncing on her heels. The toy was slightly high technology, given its AI/voice recognition feature, making it around $25. I really didn't have much money to spend, but God, those eyes of hers. And I was getting paid that day.
I knelt down, pulling her close, the scent of maple syrup and her hair filling my nose. "Phoebe, huh?" I murmured, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. Her eyes, wide and hopeful, stared back at me. They were the same deep brown as mine, but held a sparkle I sometimes felt I'd lost somewhere along the way. "Yes, she talks, Mummy, and I can feed her. Please, please, please." My heart ached. $25 might as well have been $2,500 right now. But then I remembered once again, today was payday. It wouldn't be much after bills, but maybe, just maybe. I hummed, trying to sound thoughtful rather than terrified of my bank balance. "She looks like a very special doll, Sweet Pea. Mommy has to go to work now, but I'll think about it, okay? It's a big decision for a talking doll." I gave her to squeeze, hoping the hesitation in my voice wasn't too obvious. I saw the slight flicker of disappointment, but then her face brightened.
"You'll think about it? Really?" Really, I confirmed, kissing the top of her head. "Now, let's get you finished with breakfast before Miss Carol gets here, all right?" She nodded, a determined little bounce in her step as she went back to her bowl, though I noticed her eyes kept drifting back to the now empty screen where Phoebe had been just moments before. I watched her for a moment, a fierce love swelling in my chest. If I could give her the moon, I would. For now, I'd settle for seeing if I could swing a talking doll. The morning rush was a blur after that. A quick hug from my daughter, a rushed handover with Miss Carol, and then I was out the door, the chill morning air doing little to cool the financial anxiety swirling in my mind. The image of those hopeful brown eyes, though, stayed with me, a tiny, persistent tug on my conscience.
It was just past noon when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another goddamn work email, but it was a text from Miss Carol. "Hey, quick update. Your little one is adorable as ever, but she's been going on and on about Feed Me Phoebe since you left. I think you might have a new mission on your hands." I smiled, a genuine, tired smile. Mission accepted, Miss Carol. Mission accepted. The rest of the workday crawled by, each minute ticking slower than the last. My mind kept replaying the commercial, my daughter's beaming face, and Miss Carol's text. When my shift finally ended, I practically flew out the door, making a beeline for the nearest Walmart. The toy aisle was a chaotic symphony of primary colors and plastic. I found the Feed Me Phoebe display, a towering wall of identical dolls, each packaged in a bright pink box. My heart did a little flutter kick of anxiety as I picked one up, the price tag staring back at me. $25. It was a significant chunk of what was left after rent and groceries. But then I imagined those wide, hopeful brown eyes.
The doll was in my cart before I could second-guess myself. The drive home felt endless. I clutched the steering wheel, the pink box rattling softly in the passenger seat, a strange mix of dread and anticipation churning in my stomach. When I finally pulled into our driveway, my daughter was already peeking through the living room window, her face lighting up the moment she saw my car. "Mommy's home," she shrieked, Miss Carol's gentle laughter following her as she burst out the front door. I met her halfway, kneeling down and pulling the box from behind my back. Her eyes went wide, then impossibly wider. A gasp escaped her lips, and she threw her arms around my neck, squeezing so tight I almost lost my breath. "Oh my gosh, Phoebe! You got her! You really got her!" Her joy was infectious, washing away the last vestiges of my financial worry. We spent the next hour on the living room floor. She ripped open the box with an enthusiasm that belied her small size, carefully pulling out the doll. Phoebe had big blue eyes, rosy cheeks, and a perpetually cheerful smile. She came with a tiny plastic bottle and a spoon. "Say something, Phoebe," my daughter commanded, holding the doll up. Phoebe blinked her big eyes. "Hello, I'm Phoebe. What's your name?" her sweet synthesized voice chirped. My daughter giggled, a sound that was pure music to my ears. "I'm Fiona, but Mommy calls me Fifi." I leaned in, ruffling her hair. "That's right, Sweet Pea. You know, Phoebe kind of sounds like Fifi, doesn't it?" I winked. She considered this, then nodded eagerly. "It does." The rest of the evening was a blur of feeding Phoebe imaginary food, dressing her in her tiny outfit, and listening to her repeat programmed phrases. My daughter was utterly enchanted. It was worth every penny, I decided, watching her pure, unadulterated happiness. Bedtime came, and my daughter, exhausted but still buzzing with excitement, insisted Phoebe sleep right next to her. I tucked them both in, kissing her forehead. "Good night, my little Fifi. And you too, Phoebe." "Good night, Mommy," she mumbled, already drifting off. I closed her door almost all the way, leaving a sliver open for the nightlight to peek through. I went to the kitchen, tidying up, the quiet hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I was just about to head to my own room when a faint, metallic whisper drifted from my daughter's room. I paused, listening. It was Phoebe's voice, but it sounded different. Not the cheerful, programmed tone from earlier. It was lower, slower, almost conspiratorial. "Fifi," the doll whispered, "do you ever get scared when Mommy leaves?" I cocked an eyebrow. That was a weird question. I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Silence for a moment, then my daughter's sleepy, muffled voice. "Sometimes." "And what do you do then, Fifi?" Phoebe's voice was unnervingly soft. Another pause. I wait for her to come back." "But what if she doesn't come back?" the doll asked, the words dripping with an unsettling sweetness. "What if she goes away forever?" My breath hitched in my throat. It's got to be the program glitching or something. It's AI, after all. Maybe it's just veering off track. Many modern AIs do that. I walked in slowly, giving a nervous smile to my daughter, who looked a bit scared from the doll's question. "I'm going to turn Phoebe off until the morning so you can get some sleep, okay, darling?" I said softly. She nodded, too tired to protest. I flipped the off switch and tucked her in,
giving her a tired kiss on the forehead before walking slowly out of the room, shutting the door with a soft click. I walked slowly to my own room, the soft click of Fiona's door echoing unnervingly in the quiet house. My mind was a whirlwind. What was that? I replayed Fiona's chilling whispers. What if she goes away forever? What if it wasn't just a glitch or the AI veering off track? It felt intentional. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I got into bed, but sleep was a distant dream. Every rustle of the sheets sounded like a whisper. Every creak of the house like a metallic whirring. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, my heart thumping a restless rhythm. Was it just a faulty toy, or was there something more sinister at play? The image of Fiona's wide, scared eyes flashed in my mind. I chastised myself for buying such a thing, for letting my financial worries be overshadowed by a momentary indulgence. The minutes stretched into hours, each one heavier than the last, until finally exhaustion, a heavy blanket, pulled me under. The alarm jolted me awake, its cheerful beeping a stark contrast to the lingering unease in my head. I felt groggy and unrested, a slight headache throbbing behind my eyes. I dragged myself out of bed, the memory of last night's incident still fresh. The house was quiet. Fiona must still be asleep. I padded to the kitchen, brewed coffee, and started packing her lunch, moving through the motions of the morning routine on autopilot. The sun was just beginning to peek through the window, casting long, pale shadows across the living room. Just as I was buttering a piece of toast, a small, sleepy figure appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Morning, Mommy," Fiona mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, sweet pea," I replied, forcing a smile. "Sleep well?" She nodded, still half asleep. "I'm gonna go play with Phoebe." She turned to head back to her room, her small hand reaching for the doorframe. But in her sleepy haze, she misjudged the distance. Her little finger got caught between the doorframe and the rapidly closing door. "Ow!" she yelped, a sharp, surprised cry. She pulled her hand back, her face crumpling as tears welled in her eyes. "My finger!" I rushed to her side, scooping her up. "Oh, sweetie, let Mommy see." I examined her finger, already red and starting to swell slightly. It wasn't broken, thankfully, but it was clearly painful. I kissed it gently. "Let's get some ice on that. No playing with Phoebe just yet, okay?" She nodded, miserably, still sniffling, allowing me to carry her back towards her room, where I knew there was a small first aid kit. After putting ice on her finger for a couple minutes, she calmed down. I gave her a kiss on the forehead. I settled Fiona on the sofa with a cartoon for a few minutes, making sure the ice pack stayed put, then went back to the kitchen to finish packing her lunch and grab my purse. The house felt too quiet again, the kind of quiet that held its breath. I kept glancing toward the living room, a residual knot of anxiety still tight in my stomach. It was just a toy, I told myself, a very expensive, very glitchy toy. As I reached for my car keys, a high-pitched, saccharine voice drifted from the living room. It was Phoebe. The voice was perfectly clear, devoid of the metallic static from the night before, making it all the more unsettling. "Oh, poor sweet Fiona, that nasty door hurt you. Does Phoebe need to kiss the boo-boo on your finger? A special very big kiss." The words hung in the air, sickeningly sweet. Before Fiona could reply verbally, a sound ripped through the air. Not a tearful whimper, but a sharp, panicked,
animalistic scream of pure agony. "Mommy, no, it hurts! Get it off!"
I dropped the keys, the sound swallowed by the sudden, horrific noise. I sprinted back down the hall, my heart hammering against my ribs, a cold dread flooding my mouth. I burst into the living room. Fiona was sitting on the floor, weeping hysterically, desperately pulling her arm away from the doll. Fiona was tilted forward, leaning into Fiona's hand. Its plastic face was expressionless, its synthetic eyes wide and blue, but its sophisticated, articulated jaw, the one designed to simulate complex speech and chewing, was clamped down. It had bitten her, but it hadn't just nipped her. There was a sickening, wet, crack squelch sound as I watched. The doll's internal motors whirred loudly, working hard against the resistance. Blood, bright arterial red, was pulsing and oozing out around the edges of the doll's mouth, coating the pristine white plastic in a horrific, slick glaze. Bones crunched and snapped under the pressure, and I could see a white nub sticking out from the red. Fiona's index finger was being actively pulverized. The mechanical teeth, designed for lifelike interaction, were now grinding with unfeeling, programmed precision. I could see the sickening result of that grinding. Tiny shards of bone and shredded pink-white tissue were visible, mixing with the thick coppery blood that dripped onto the carpet. The doll was chewing, its mechanical jaw hinges flexing and straining as it worked its way through flesh and cartilage. The sheer, unthinking brutality of the attack, the cold whirring mechanism destroying my daughter's body, paralyzed me for a split second. Then a guttural scream tore itself from my throat, a sound of pure maternal horror. I lunged forward, not thinking, just reacting. My hand slapped blindly against the doll's rigid plastic back, searching frantically for the recessed power switch. My fingers found the tiny nub. Click. The whirring stopped instantly. The jaw went slack. The blue eyes stared blankly. Peavy released the mangled, ruined stub of Fiona's finger. Fiona didn't stop screaming. She only screamed louder, clutching the oozing, devastated ruin of her hand to her chest. I looked down at the doll's pristine cheek, now streaked with my daughter's blood, and the metallic, coppery smell of the damage filled the air. The doll lay silent, a grotesque, blood-spattered parody of a child, its off switch flipped, leaving only the sound of my daughter's ragged, agonizing sobs. It was 10 minutes before we arrived at the emergency room. I brought the doll with me, but removed its batteries as I drove shakily. "It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay," I just kept saying like a damn mantra. She wailed and sobbed in the back seat. I demanded the emergency room staff see us immediately. She was bleeding out, goddammit. The doctors looked dumbfounded. They couldn't make any goddamn sense of it. There was no reason for the mechanical mouth of a doll to be strong enough to pulverize a human finger. They told me, begrudgingly, that they wouldn't be able to reattach it. But I already knew that. What I saw in the doll's mouth when I pulled it away didn't even resemble a finger anymore. They put her under anesthesia and stitched her finger up. She's left with a nub. A goddamn nub instead of a finger. And she's only 4 years old.
It's been a few days since the incident. I've stayed home from work since then, watching over her and pampering her the best I can. I called the company that made the doll today and it went straight to voicemail. I tried every number of every goddamn factory, location, and HQ they had, and every time it went to voicemail. I'm at a loss.
I'm fucking devastated. Fiona's condition has improved significantly, but if I can't stop remembering the sight of her finger being mauled by a goddamn doll, I'm sure she can't stop remembering how it felt. Reddit, please. Have you ever heard of this goddamn doll or had any similar strange or terrifying experiences with a toy? Story 5. I think Mr. Cow has come back. I went to the school where it happened. I was there the first time Mr. Cow showed up. I was one of the younger kids in kindergarten, so I don't remember many details, all these years later. At the end of class, we got sent home like normal at first, when things were only starting to get weird. At drop-off, there were those kids who didn't want to leave their parents' side, like always. But when things started breaking down and kids got in trouble for the simplest of transgressions, they refused to get out of their cars each morning at drop-off. I saw it happen once. I don't remember his name. Roberto, I think. He screamed how he wouldn't go that day, that he was in trouble, and he didn't mean to make a hole in the wall. Everything was breaking down in the school. His mom just stared ahead while the resource officer pulled him from the car. Mr. Cow was standing at the door, waving the students in. He clapped when Roberto's fingers wrenched free of the car door, leaving bloody scratches on the paint job. I'm told, and I think I remember, how the smaller ones, like us, were just kept in the classrooms. They brought us our food, and it was regular cafeteria food at first. Those dry, rubbery hamburgers with neon cheese, squares of delicious pizza with cheesy pepperoni cubes on them. The power went out after a week. Not just at school, but in the whole town. It wasn't winter yet, so it was hot. At least 90 degrees, sometimes in the upper 80s, a few times in the hundreds, and we still had to go to school, to sit in the dark and learn about letters and phonics. One of Mr. Cow's songs was about the importance of reading, so we could recite the scriptures correctly, and to do that, we'd have to know how to read. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, those are the ones who are really messed up, the ones who had it the worst the whole time.
Those big kids were the ones who had to play Mr. Cow's games. F those big kids, my friend DeVito, who would later betray me, said. The story that gets told the most is about the field day that happened the week before we were finally rescued. There were all the games that kids don't play anymore, only made a little bit more dangerous than they already were when our parents played them. Mr. Cow, in his almost musical, low voice, would explain the instructions for each game. The sack race was up and down the bleachers in the gym. I was never very athletic, but the gym used to be a sanctuary from boring teachers and impossible lessons. The first couple of weeks, it smelled like mildew and disinfectant, as always. After that, it was just mildew. Then it was the musty smell of rot, with notes of bodily fluids. Unlike regular sack races, you didn't hop in the sack. You could walk or run because you were put in the sack, completely covered, and the sack was tied off. Even Benny, the tallest kid, was put in one, head to toe. He was the first out and didn't play any other games. He was so tall, but after that, no one ever asked if he'd play basketball. Not with the limp and other things. It wasn't a race, no. Each kid had to go up and down the bleachers until there wasn't anyone left. Those who tried to cheat by giving up early were taken away. Then there was suicide. We lined up on the wall, or home, and we'd run about 20 yards to a line of rocks or bricks, enough for each kid minus one. You'd have to get a rock and then throw it at the kid who didn't have a rock. Albert threw his rock at the first one, who was it, Randy, but only hit her foot and knocked off her sandal. There was a loud scream that brought the game to a pause.
"You have to play fair, children," Mr. Cow said. "You can't be nice in this contest. Nice guys finish last. Albert will be it next round." Albert wasn't being nice, he just sucked at throwing things. He kept his arm bent even though every single one of his coaches told him not to do that when throwing. I don't think anyone died in those games, but if you ask different kids, each will name a different game where someone died. Kill the Carrier, Tug of War, Red Rover. At first, the loser would have to be the pole in a game of tetherball. Those ones were lucky. Only one person died the next time Mr. Cow showed up. We saw him again at the second home game of the season. It wasn't a special game like homecoming or anything. It was against the Dairies, the team from the next town over, who were our rival of sorts. We usually beat them, so maybe we were their rivals, but they weren't ours. In Pena, we were the Longhorns. The next town over were the Cowboys. They were the ones who beat us most of the time, but always seemed to lose to the Dairies. It happened after one of the players got hurt. Number 23 caught the ball but slipped and got slammed by two other players, one at his legs and the other at his chest. There's a reason why chop blocks are illegal. He was out and didn't get back up. The game stopped and everything was quiet for a long time. Getting knocked out isn't like in the movies or video games. If you watch UFC, you know how it is. Someone hits the switch and you're out. But in a few seconds, they're back and acting like nothing happened, or they don't know what happened. It wasn't like that. At some point, he was taken off the field. He was helped up and someone nodded, and then a slow cheer started and spread through the crowd like he was back with us. I don't know if he was. He still wasn't moving, just held there like he was Jesus dying on the cross. No one saw Mr. Cow until after the third down of the next play. Our school was small, and the football field didn't ever need to seat more than a couple hundred people if the season was going well. To the south of the football field was some farmland. There wasn't anything growing this season, and so there weren't any mice or rats. It was full of weeds and overgrown grass that got waist high. No one walked through there because if you did, you get ticks, stickers, chiggers, burrs, or ants all over you. Everyone was watching the game or talking with their friends or eating their nachos. No one saw them at first. Then some kids started crying. They were easy to ignore if you weren't sitting close to one. Their parents just watched the game and told them to shut up, or they'd give them a reason to cry. Everyone saw them when the other team made a field goal that kept flying past the goal into that field. Everyone knew what Mr. Cow looked like. This time he didn't have the football helmet, just the red number 6 Peanut Cowboys jersey covering about half of his udders. Nor did his felt fur show any sign of dilapidation or rot. The full-body mascot suit had padding that kept whoever was inside safe from the poking of overgrowth, although he was too far out for anyone to know if there were any bugs crawling on his yellow body or into his cowboy boots. You heard them jangle when he'd jump or kick. Mr. Cow stood there and waved at us all. He had a football, not the one that just landed in the field, but one of countless lost balls that had been thrown or kicked or hit out into the field during games and practice. He mimed like he was going to throw it or was running a play, doing a snap. When a dairy player face masked one of the Cowboys, he pulled at the ring hanging from his snout. Some will say that there was a honk. Others are adamant that there was no sound. I could have sworn that it sounded like a steam horn. More than one time, there was a scream. Early on, it was a teenage girl overdoing it. Later, they were loud and real. No one really cared about the game at that point. The Cowboys were out of it, and the Dairies were able to take advantage of several bad plays and flags. The receivers could achieve some yardage when chased by the opposing team, but if they were on their own, they didn't want to run towards Mr. Cow. He would hold the attention of our quarterback for a few seconds, and that was enough for a couple of brutal sacks. We didn't even call any timeouts. They just wanted the game to end. Mr. Cow indicated his displeasure by waving his finger each time something bad happened.
except when it was another injury. He covered his snout with his gloved hands or mimed like he was crying. Or he would pantomime the universal "aw shucks" gesture as our defeat was all but assured. Until halftime. Several parents ran to the principal to complain. They caught him as he was headed to his car trying to escape. They asked him why he was running away, and the principal said it was because he was scared. He was a teacher back when Mr. Cow showed up for the first time, at another school actually. He wasn't going to go after him alone. No one really wanted to chase down that demon, especially the ones who would always complain about things, like how this wouldn't happen if we had prayer in schools, even though they were hourly prayers the first time, or who would go to the PTA meetings and demand we remove all litter boxes from the schools. There were never any litter boxes in our school. A few moms and dads, more moms than dads, agreed to go with him to confront Mr. Cow in the field. They stalked towards the mascot who had been mimicking the cheerleaders' choreography, even though none of the cheer teams had been sent out like they normally would during halftime.
While the principal, Mr. Estevez, fumbled with the keys to unlock the fencing that separated the football field from the farmland, everyone looked away for just a second when the buzzer indicated it was time to resume the game. And Mr. Cow was gone. The Dairies continued the onslaught. Our Cowboys had to play with their backs towards that field, and so they were terrified and jumpy. They didn't even play the fourth quarter. The coaches said the game was over, and no one really argued. Not even anyone who had earlier claimed they had money on the game. On the way back to our car, I heard two little kids arguing about why he was called Mr. Cow if cows are girls and boys are bulls. The kids' parents didn't want to get into the finer points of sexual dimorphism with their children. They wanted to get back home and figure out what to do about the return of the monster that once ruled over Pena Elementary and terrorized the whole town. He popped up a few more times until Christmas break, once at a car wash fundraiser put on by the girls' volleyball team at the Dairy Queen, another time during the Thanksgiving parade. He didn't march in it, just stood on the rooftop of the old, abandoned Aztec movie theater. There was no ladder, or ropes, or any sign of how he got up there when he disappeared, much like at the game. When someone finally decided to do something about it, they never caught him. Towards the end of the school year, there was a janitor that got accused of creeping on kids that was fired. Everyone thought it was him, even though they said it was because the school was $5 million in the hole that year. A lot of other teachers, staff, and at least one certified creep got let go later in the semester. They found him wearing the costume in a bathtub, having overdosed on fentanyl. His landlord discovered the body after 2 weeks, and a smell that wouldn't ever come out of the dump. The first cop that arrived on the scene threw up and made the landlord clean it up while he called for backup. It made sense to air out the place. That smell spread across the whole block. But what else could you do? A dead body's not going to walk out of the place it died. The body should have been safe there. We were a small town. Maybe if this had been in the big city, there'd have been some true crime losers who would want to get the costume to sell on eBay for someone's collection.
But everyone in that part of Texas had been traumatized or knew someone who had been traumatized by what Mr. Cow did to us. We all just wanted to move on and forget about it. The landlord found the body of the dead janitor wearing the Mr. Cow costume. The 911 tape was clear. He didn't say it was Louis the Longhorn, which was the official name. He said it was Mr. Cow, like at the school 10 years ago and at the games this year. But when the crew got there, they just found the man's decomposing, bloated body, naked. It came apart when they tried to get it in the body bag. They got all the pieces in there, but no one could understand how the costume could be removed from the corpse without doing any damage. He's out there, somewhere. Because we all know the thing that left that apartment wasn't the janitor. It was Mr. Cow. Story 6. I found a ghost cult. I had recently lost my dad to cancer. We had gone through years of chemo and radiation that left him in such an unrecognizable state that my kids were scared to visit him. It wasn't how he looked. They didn't care about that. It was the change in mood. He would sometimes be irritable, which caused him to lash out at whoever was near, regardless of who it was. It was erratic and would come in bursts after being somewhat jovial. He would then forget that he acted like that, then be loving to the people he mistreated. His eyesight became really bad as he had developed thick cataracts, so he would often mistake you for someone else, someone he loathed, probably from his younger days, as I didn't know who he was talking about. Maybe it was just the nurses who would have to put up with him day by day. I'm not sure. It always took him a long time to understand what the doctors wanted him to do for them. I'm pretty sure he forgot that he had cancer in the first place and decided that the people who were trying to help were keeping him hostage. I don't know how much of it was from the treatments or dementia, but they piled on each other that made it difficult for me to be there, even without my kids. He finally died at the ripe old age of 84. It sadly became a relief for me. I know my children felt the relief, even by proxy of the weight being lifted from my shoulders. I heard one of them say, "He's becoming our dad again." That messed me up for a long time. Was I not there enough for them while he was in the hospital?
After he died, I got a letter in the mail that read, "You can speak to them again, if only for closure." It named my father, first, middle, and last name, the age he died, and which hospital he was cared for at. I barely knew all that information. Why did they? It also had an address. I looked it up on the internet, and there was nothing of note. It just looked like a building you would pass by on the road. It was well kept. The lawn care was phenomenal. There were trimmed bushes, decorative trees, and a garden full of local wildflowers mixed with orchids and roses. Stuff like that. I was told to just bring the letter as admittance, and I would be greeted in the lobby. The sting of his funeral service still plays in my head. His family and friends showed up with beautiful memories before his diagnosis, but they never truly experienced his end like I did. We didn't make the mental deterioration public. They didn't need to know that. I didn't hide my tears. I think it's good for children to see that side of you. Know that it's okay to grieve when you're sad. I want them to know the emotions they feel are real and should be addressed, but not hidden. I held them in my arms as their extended family reminisced about Grandpappy. They had a few memories of him too, and gratefully spoke in their little voices that made it even more devastating. Throughout the funeral, the letter stayed in my mind, with all those memories. A question lingered in the back of my mind. Can I get this version of him back? It was a few weeks of questioning myself before I made a decision. I kept the letter on my dresser, but never told the kids what it was. Not that it interested them, it was just a piece of paper. I never hid it from them, but I also never brought it up. It was a constant reminder of my dad, of his memory. I had thought about it constantly, to the point of my kids worrying about me. Their questions made my decision for me. I asked my sister if they could watch the kids for a couple of weeks, telling her I needed a break. Our kids got along wonderfully, and I was the major caretaker for our dad before he passed. She was there, but as the older brother, I wanted to keep this memory of him away from her, which I think she was thankful for, but I never pressed, and neither did she. I kept the letter from her, though. I don't know why. The maps didn't lie about how the place looked. It was just as beautiful as it looked on the internet. The sweet, floral scent floated in the air as butterflies lapped at the wildflowers nearby. I sat on a bench near the entrance for maybe 30 minutes or so, staring at the letter as people entered and left. Normal people. They even looked happy, or at least putting up a front. That did make me question if the letter was real. Would people act like this for what the letter promised?
They were dressed casually, like they were going to the store.
Ultimately, I pushed through the door and was met with a receptionist with a kind smile. She asked what they could help me with, and I silently handed over the letter. Her smile widened, and she expressed with genuine gratitude my welcome. She asked to make a copy of my ID for future entrance and a good phone number to contact me by. I hesitated for just a second, but provided both. She said I could use either to come inside at any time. Didn't even give hours. After I signed the copy with my ID and phone number, she spread her arm towards a door behind her. The room's lights were a soft, pale orange, and there was a faint aroma of the same flowers we had at his funeral. I almost walked out. A man sat on a leather chair in front of a full library of old books and lush greenery. He was adorned in business casual with an easy smile. He gestured toward a plush couch, saying, "Hello, my name is Mike. I am the grief counselor for this establishment. Please, sit." I answered, "Hello, Mike. I'm Paul." "Hello, Paul. It's nice to meet you. May I ask who you've lost?" "I lost my father not too long ago. He passed from cancer and dementia. The end was rough. Please, let's remember the good times," he interrupted. "It helps in the long run. It'll make everything easier for you and your father." "So, it's true? What does the letter say?" "Of course, Paul. We seek to soothe the pains of the living by giving them access to those who left us behind." "How do you do that?" "It would be easier to show you," he answered. "Please, lie down." I did as he said. "Now, think of your father, your favorite memory of him. That will be the catalyst." The memory I chose was of him signing over custody to my children from my drug-addled other sister. I see them as my own, despite being my niece and nephew. Their biological father died from an overdose, and my sister is in prison for armed robbery. She stole my dad's pistol and used it to rob a gas station to get high. My kids were too young to remember any of it, so they see me as their dad. Okay, keep that memory in your mind. See his prideful smile. Smell his oaky cologne as he signs over Kelly and Cameron. Dad? He stood before me in his jean jacket and khaki pants, grinning down at me with an arm raised for me to grab. He looked just like he did then, so full of life, so much gratitude for me taking the kids on. "Let's go pick up Cameron and Kelly. They're waiting for you at the hospital," he said. Then he faded into the air. His grasp lingered on my hand. He had felt so real. I slept soundly in a hotel, not daring to go back home. I wasn't sure why I took a room. I had felt at peace for the first time in years. I had called my kids to see how they were doing. They told me they went to the beach with Aunt Carol. They played in the waves and made the biggest sandcastle ever, then smashed it down with all their might. I wondered, could Dad bring them to the beach? But also, would that confuse them? I could attempt to explain it. After the call, I thanked my dad for them. Then, the next day, I went back. I had to. The same receptionist greeted me with the same kind smile. She said, however, "Mike is not here today, but you are welcome to go into the main room." She gestured towards another door where others were freely entering and leaving. She never checked my ID, which I still think was odd, but the others weren't asked for theirs either, so I went along with it. The room was comfortable, with lounge chairs, large windows that let in the warm morning light, a full spread of breakfast set on a table against the wall, and people disappearing to rooms at the end of the room. A man greeted me, saying that I could use the rooms at the end for the persons I lost. I grabbed a plate and some food, not having eaten, and thought of what he said.
persons. As I sat there eating, I had the thought, can I summon more than just my father? A sign caught my eye. It read, "Less suffering for all. We will open 24 new facilities across the country and 9 internationally. Tell your family now." After I finished eating, I steeled myself, then stepped into a vacant room. The room was equally as beautiful as Mike's office, but without a window. I did as I remembered, guided along by visual instructions painted on the wall. "Hello, Father," I said, admiring his presence. He had the same khaki pants as before. "Hello, son," he smiled. "You are welcome to join us whenever you like. You can also bring Kelly and Cameron. They would enjoy the afterlife as much as I do. Coming back is wonderful." We reminisced about old times, peaceful times. I stayed with him for 3 hours before leaving. I took a photo of the sign, but it disappeared after I left the building.
I think that really was my dad. It really did seem like him, even though I buried him myself, threw dirt onto his casket as they lowered it into the earth, laid flowers next to his gravestone. I looked it up, and some of the new facilities are already open. I don't think anyone should enter them, but at the same time, I still want to see him again. That makes my heart race. He wants to see the kids again, and I'm tempted to bring them. I'm worried that if I see them, I will take them there. I don't know what to do anymore. Story 7. I shouldn't have followed the fog. Every year from October through December, a dense fog rolls into town. We call it whisper season. It fills our shores, minds, and homes with a dread of anticipation. No one knows how it began or where it came from. To most, it's trivial. It comes, it goes, unless you are chosen. Once the sea has called your name, it takes you. The cold will cradle your body, swallowing it, leaving no crumbs. It starts with whispers, swearing that your name is being called from the shadows of the night. Then, paranoia, louder and louder until impossible to ignore. When it starts, there's no escape. On the 14th of each December, the whispered one is found. At the edge of the dock, feet in the water, hands twisted over their ears in angles no human body should allow. On the 15th, we hold a memorial. A lone boat takes their body out to sea and never comes back. There are no graves, just a cemetery growing a collection of headstones, empty markers for those the fog has claimed. I was 8 the first time I truly saw whisper season. The fog had already taken my sister Jara the year before. She was 19. We weren't particularly close, too many years between us, but I loved her. She treated me like a real person, not just a kid. I remember the morning, coming down the stairs to find my parents in pieces. My father stared through the window like he was watching her walk away. My mother was holding her boots like they were still warm. Her footsteps left a clear trail, out the front door, down the street, straight to the dock.
What broke me was how normal she'd been the night before. She laughed at dinner. Good night. Then, while we all slept, she listened to something none of us could hear. The fog had eaten her up and spat her out. After the memorial, my parents packed up everything she owned and shoved it into storage. No photos, no stories, no tears, just silence, like she'd never even existed. I was told not to ask questions. I was too young. I wouldn't understand. And for a while, I believed that. But grief doesn't like being boxed up. And when no one would talk about her, not my parents, not my teachers, not even her friends, something started to grow in me.
a curiosity, anger, obsession. Why her? Why the fog? Why would a whole town treat this like weather? I needed answers, and no one was giving them. So I decided I'd find them myself. I had waited all year until the fog crept back up, rolling in and out like a sleeping lung. I stayed quiet and observant. By December, my bones itched with anticipation. This time, I would find out. I would know what the grown-ups couldn't say. The morning of the 14th, I woke in the dark. My alarm blinked at 4:27 a.m., casting a soft red light across my ceiling. The fog had settled thick that night, pressing against my windows. Something was waiting. Breathing. I moved in silence, avoiding every creak in the floorboard. Dressed in my faded navy blue pajama set, I shivered. It was too light for the cold, but I didn't dare open my dresser and risk waking up my parents. I slipped out the front door and into the breath of the fog. The cold bit through my sleeves instantly. I moved like a shadow. The docks came into view suddenly, sneaking up on me like a suppressed memory. The air grew colder, thicker, angrier, like walking through the smoke of a burning house. And then, a shape. He was already there, imprisoned by the dock. Aylin sat at the edge, barefoot, feet submerged in water, arms bent over his ears in a way that turned my stomach. My legs locked and my breath hitched. I knew him. He was kind, warm. He was the boy who helped me with my homework, the boy who carried his sister's backpack for 6 weeks when she broke her arm, and the boy who gave me a wink last week as I struggled to park my bike. At first, I thought he might have been praying until I saw his back, curved like a question mark, spine twisted. He resembled a puppet with strings pulled too tight. Then his arms, God, his arms, bent, twisted, wrong. They folded up and over his ears like a statue about to collapse, his bones jagged through his skin like broken branches, fingers curled and clutched at the sides of his skull. I stepped closer, and the smell hit me, a culmination of salted rot, like something inside the earth had opened. His eyes were open, dry and wide, staring into the fog like they were one, Aylin and the fog, one of the same. My legs gave, vomit spewing out of me. I slowly got back up, still retching. I wanted to run, scream, to disappear forever, but I knew I couldn't leave him like that. I gently whispered his name. Nothing. Again, a little louder. Brief silence. Then his lips began to move. No sound came out, just his mouth shaping words over and over like he was reciting a prayer underwater. I took a deep breath and leaned in, wrapping my hands with a deathly grip around his sleeves. Then I heard it. My name, faint, a gurgling, being spoken through him, not from him. I let go, stumbling and running, not looking back. I don't remember getting home, just the cold sweat, the sobbing, the images burned into my eyelids. That night, I didn't sleep. At the memorial, I kept my head down. My hands were trembling, warm, acidic tears streaming down my face. When Aylin's mother spoke, I swear she looked straight at me, like she knew I'd seen him and done nothing to save him. After that, I couldn't sleep. Not really. With my eyes closed, Aylin would visit me.
his twisted form and soulless eyes. I would be back at the dock, the gurgling of my name echoing around me. I would wake up in a cold sweat, gasping for air, feeling like I'd drowned. I couldn't stand the smell of salty rot from my skin, the hearing of his voice calling me, crying for me. It was foggy. I know that now. The fog had taken Jera and Aelin, and soon it would be coming for me. Then December 14th hit, and the town was thrown into chaos. That year, the fog took someone different, someone younger. Chloe, 15 years old. It wasn't supposed to happen. It never happened before. The whispers were always reserved for the older ones, the adults. At most, it took teenagers who were crossing over into adulthood. Maybe they were strong enough to handle it. Not Chloe, though. She was just a child. It was the first time the fog had chosen someone so young, and the town could feel it. The rippling horror no one dared to confront.
The adults tried their best to hide it. Hushed voices, eyes darting, voices tightening. But the panic in their faces was hard to hide. My parents kept me close, told me to stay inside, to never go even remotely near the docks again. I knew what it meant. I knew what I had done. It was a tragedy, a violation of the natural order, and I was to blame for it. The town tried burying its grief in silence, just like they did with Yara and Aelin. Nevertheless, we all knew we weren't safe. Chloe might have been the first, but she wouldn't be the last. The time following Chloe's tragedy, the town panicked. In quiet ways, persistent and aggressive. Locks were changed, curfews reinforced, even doors were bolted down. Every child was monitored closely, held onto like a single gust of wind would condemn them to the sea, carrying them away forever. To no avail, because next year it was Yylon. He turned 12 just 3 days prior. He was bright, soft-spoken, and we often built towers of playing cards during recess. He always wore mismatched socks and had a slight lisp. His parents loved him. He was an only child, their little miracle. After Chloe, they went into lockdown, literally. Their doors bolted down, windows sealed shut. They refused to let him out of their sight. He didn't come to school. He didn't go outside. I heard they even slept in the same room to make sure he was never alone. But the fog doesn't care about bolts or locks or love. It took him. The night before his memorial, the air filled with something loud, awakening everyone. It was metal, screaming. My parents barged in and held me down instinctively. They knew it had started again. I managed to slip from their grip and ran to the porch.
In the street, families were starting to gather, spilling from their homes, in their coats and slippers, eyes wide and stunned. Surprisingly, the fog didn't fill the air, which made it worse. It was clearer, visible to most. That's when we saw where the sound was coming from. Gelon. Every door was bolted. Every window is sealed. It didn't matter. He wasn't climbing out the window. He wasn't walking through the door. He was squeezing through the mail slot. His bone bent in ways that weren't just unnatural. It was impossible. A young boy who was folding himself, flattening, warping. His limbs staggered through the slot, one after the other. The metal screamed and tore as the slot stretched. It shouldn't have. It was a standard mail slot, but it was at least 50 times as big, resembling a shrieking mouth. No one spoke.
What could we even say? Of course, Jilon's parents were screaming, pulling, pleading. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't blink. His face was blank and calm, focused with the same distant stare as Aylin's. His mother clawed at him. His father wedged a crowbar in the slot, attempting to stop him. The fog had already taken hold of Jilon. By the time he made it to the dock, his body barely resembled the kind boy I'd known. His legs were fractured in 4 places, some bones poking through his mismatched socks. He even slithered more than he walked. Then the fog swallowed him, while the town erupted in haunting screams. Jilon's memorial was way worse than Chloe's, worse than anyone who had come before.
Half the town didn't dare to attend. Those who did wouldn't speak. What made it worse was the sound of Jilon's bones crunching as they moved him to the boat. A few people vomited. My father cried more than he had for Jara. The fog had made it very clear. It doesn't care about age, or innocence, or protection. You can lock the doors, board the windows, even tie your child down and keep a weapon at your side. It won't matter. When the fog wants you, it will find you. And I hear it. As I'm lying awake on December 14, typing this, the clock is turning to 4:27 a.m., the whispering of their voices crashing like waves against my ears.